Hello, welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed. We are reading the Meno to answer the question, how do we become good people? Or not just good people, the bestest of people. Our excellence or our virtue. How do we become virtuous people? And does it involve some sort of teaching? Now we're at the end of the text where Socrates has just finished his conversation with Anytos, and Anytos threatens to kill Socrates for as a response to the conclusion at the end of the dialectic, which is interesting because there are far more Anytoses in the world than there are Socrateses. So, even though literally what we're here for is to master the art of the dialectic, if you've been reading along, it's been made quite clear by Socrates and our own reading and doing it, practicing our dialectics, and also we've been seeing in midwifery, it's also the method for removing human problems. But despite it being something which makes you more good in both parts of what humans need, purify what's sick, perfect what's healthy, those two things. Anytos' reaction to that isn't to cheer like this, or to clap like this, or to say he no longer wants to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
His response was to threaten to kill Socrates. Now, we are learning to we can use this to understand our world, but also ourselves. Because as we progress towards our own mastery of the dialectic, understanding, skillful use of words, understanding how to relate to people in a good and beneficial way, we will have Anytos-like reactions. So we can look for the different characters as aspects of our own psyche, as well as understand society, because we still live in a society, as simply the playing out of those psychic forces within our soul writ large. But primarily we are reading to understand ourselves. So Anytos' reaction was so negative to going through the dialectic, coming to a conclusion. And we had to ask the question, why? What about Anytos' conclusion triggered Anytos? And if this is a universal, or if it's a principle that humans at the level of Anytos, or the psychic aspects within ourselves that Anytos represents, if they get triggered by dialectic and whatever the conclusion was, how do we understand that, prepare for that, and navigate artfully and gracefully around those sorts of counterattacks or blocks? So those are our questions. Number one, what was the conclusion that triggered Anytos so much? Number two, what does that tell us about our question of whether or not you can teach virtue? Because here is Socrates teaching him something. Not just the content, we're going to get to the conclusion, that's the first thing, but the methodology. Socrates is not just defining the dialectic, he's demonstrating it. He's not just demonstrating it himself to another, like Meno, he's demonstrating it to others. He's talking to Meno about color and shape, about virtue, about education, about being okay with not knowing, about why it's better to be curious and open than certain in your beliefs. He's talking to Anytos, a different dude that came in. He talked to talked to Meno's slave boy. So, he's defining it, he's demonstrating it. He's demonstrating it in a lot of different ways, division. And our job is to look at all of those divisions and say, and synthesize it, which is the fourth and final step of that very dialectic he is defining, demonstrating, and dividing, making Socrates a walking dialectic. What does that tell us about our question? If the book has been about whether or not virtue can be taught, and over again it just keeps coming back to the dialectic, all of the childishness and threats and name calling are just deviations from the dialectic, and they all come up when someone is triggered because of some level of the dialectic they can't handle. Does that mean Socrates may have completed whatever it was that you need to learn to become virtuous? If he is a walking dialectic? Is the difference between Meno, Anytos, and people who are ignorant, and Socrates simply that one is using the dialectic and one isn't? Well, Meno claims to understand. Isn't that the dialectic? Isn't understanding the dialectic? Yep. He claims to be able to define virtue. Isn't definition one of the four categories of the dialectic? Yep. And carrying this false definition of virtue, functioning as if they know things they don't, definition and demonstration, definition and functioning. They're also going out into the world and relating to many sorts of other people. Meno giving many talks about what virtue is, even though he's wrong. Anytos eventually rising to political power and being one of the people who sentenced Socrates to death. Division. See? Definition, demonstration, division. So what makes Socrates virtuous, or more virtuous than these other dudes, might not be whether or not they're using the dialectic, it's just whether or not they're using it consciously, skillfully, or artfully. Maybe that's what we're seeing here. Because we still try and make sense of the world, we still use language, we still engage with other people. This is all the logos, which follows the structure of the dialectic. So we can ask the question, which one is using their level of mastery of the dialectic good and beneficially, and which isn't? Which is more aligned to goodness or virtue, and which is aligned to vice? And from that we can go one step further and say, why? What made the difference? And how can we be the good thing and not be triggered by the dialectic and act in the worst possible ways against our own self-interest within our soul, as we Anytos and Meno ourselves, as we learn to read in this quest, and to others? We're making it meaningful for ourselves. And after going through that, only then, after going through these questions, seeing what the differences are, seeing how they relate to goodness and benefit, seeing how that connects to virtue, how they're triggered, how it's a universal thing, how it's as true today as it was back then. Only after all of that reflection can we then turn around, ousia, one more time from using the dialectic, by the way, to answer those questions if you can, and of course sharing your work with the rest of us in the chat or on the channel, on the Discord channel, link below, free. After going through all that, practicing and sharing your dialectic, hopefully, then we can ask the question of whether or not it can be taught. Because if anyone is going to teach virtue, it's Socrates. So was he able to? Was someone who's a master of virtue able to teach? And why? Or why not? So that's what we're going to look at. Number one, what was the conclusion that triggered Anytos? Number two, how can we relate it to ourselves? How we relate to ourselves and the dramas we live out in our everyday life, which themselves is just the division section of our dialectic. You could say we carry a false definition of self and reality that we're here to learn about and remove and find the truth. We function in that way towards ourselves. There's a definition and demonstration. But then division divides that functioning up to many areas. That's our life. That's the dramas. That's the ups and downs we go through in the dramas of our everyday life. The fourth and final step would be the synthesis and analysis, or conclusion, requiring us to reflect on all of that. How does it play out? Both successfully in conversations like Socrates is having, and unsuccessfully in midwifery when we hit blocks, so that we can come to a conclusion about ourselves. In other words, from the division, reflect on it, ousia, dialectic, midwifery, and then come to a conclusion that you can take back to the original definition to improve your definition of yourself if the conclusion was a success. Or if you're reflecting on your blocks, you may discover something about a hidden definition that you are carrying about yourself. A false image or definition about the nature of yourself and the reality you're in. That's the pathologos. Some people call it ego because there's an image associated with yourself. And in the midwifery book, we talk about how it starts as a wordless conclusion, and then it becomes kind of a mask through which we act, and then we become identified with the mask. There's an image that we attach our identity to, so we can become more and more entrenched in this sick dialectic based on a false definition. Resulting in us functioning as Meno and Anytos do, unvirtuously or terribly towards people like Socrates, and towards ourselves and our own purpose here to learn, master the dialectic. So, what was the conclusion that triggered Anytos? What can we take away from that for ourselves? How did Meno react to not being on the hot seat but watching somebody else go through it? This is the second time Socrates has turned to another person to demonstrate the dialectic to another other in front of Meno. The first time when he was unable to accept not knowing, because being right is like, not knowing is bad, right? Wrong. Hard to accept when you're on the hot seat, especially if you think conversations are debates. You got to present the image of knowing, because debates are stupid. You don't win a debate with reason, because debates are based on opinions and not dialectic, which is step-by-step mutual reflection of reason to conclusions and then development from those conclusions. Debate isn't. It's who can give the appearance of certainty to manipulate the images of other people watching so they give you a thumbs up. Or as Ion says, so they give you their money. Today we see that with our media, especially you can see it more quickly on like YouTube and Twitch and streaming sites and podcasts and things. Certain people, a lot of people, manipulate or play into the false prejudice and pathologos images of people to manipulate them so that they will continue to watch, subscribe, buy their merch, sign up for their courses in order to get the money from them. Socrates isn't talking about money. We're talking about truth, goodness, benefit, soul, meaning, not how to declare ownership over the physical world by hoarding wealth, but to understand the nature of the physical world, where it came from, why we are here as non-physical consciousnesses or souls or selves, and what the physical world is pointing to help in our development. So you could say one is stuck in the ignorance of the physical world and the attachment to the desires of the body. One sort of person, like Meno and Anytos. Another, like Socrates, is not a slave to his physical desires that are supposed to be there just to sustain your physical body. You can't win the physical world by hoarding wealth because that's capitalism. You don't win. You isolate yourselves. You harm other souls, which harms you and makes you miserable. You destroy the planet so you can extract more profit from it. You can't win if you think the finish line is in the physical world, which is also related to what we were talking about last time with Gödel's theorem, the idea that any system can't be complete and self-contained. Meaning any system you're in has a doorway or an attic to a higher system that you have to move into if you want to continue learning. Don't get stuck down here in your ignorance, in the physical world, in your base desires, that kind of thing. Socrates is more interested in understanding and learning, the desire, the love of understanding, the desire for learning, and has correctly pointed out that, hey, by the way, you think your goal here is to murder a lot of people and collect a big bank account and then die? Why? Hey, by the way, wherever you're going, you aren't going to go to a place where all your lovely money are going to be keeping your company. You're going to be if you're going to anywhere, you're going to be around souls, and the souls of people that you made their life miserable in order to extract wealth from them, because capitalism or pathologos, vice, idea of virtue. And so after reflecting on all of that, we can ask the question, just a quick reminder, what was the conclusion? How can we relate it to ourselves and our living in the world? Did Meno benefit by watching somebody else go through it? Did it help unblock him? And then finally, given all that, can we make a conclusion about whether or not virtue can be taught? If here is a dude teaching it, and this is the reaction, what can we conclude about the question, whether or not it can be taught? That's where we are. Let's jump in and do some reading. Thank you for joining me, and let's jump in. Okie. Cool. All right. Here's the scroll. Where's my stuffy for today? On the other chair. Hang on. Pause. And we're back. I have the big stuffy and little stuffy. Look at them. So here we are in the text. Excuse me. I should mute when. Like that. So the premise is, if you can teach virtue, or it can be taught, you'll have teachers and students. And so let's look at the best sorts of people who are acknowledged to be virtuous Athenians, who have the resources, the wealth, the time, and the care for their children, such that if anyone were to have connections, have resources, and have the desire to teach virtue, it's these people. And hey, they teach their kids other stuff like horsemanship and wrestling. So, and their kids are all dopes. So what? Socrates, 94D. Is it not clear then that Thucydides would not ever have felt the need to teach his boys those subjects which cost money to teach, while he would not have felt the need to teach them those subjects which cost nothing, but make them good men, if it was indeed teachable? So this is the idea that, what if he didn't have to pay? Because he could teach it. Well, perhaps then he was of lowly descent and he didn't have many friends, Okay, so we've gone through all this. If excellence were teachable, he would surely have founded someone else to teach his sons if he was busy. This is the final conclusion. Therefore, we haven't found one person who is able to teach virtue to their children. I'm afraid, O companion Anytos, that excellence or virtue is not teachable. There's the conclusion. Anytos. So in terms of teaching, did he ask questions? Did he allow responses? Did he keep him on track when he started to go on a rant about sophists? Okay, all right. You're getting triggered about these sophists. Let's not talk about them. Let's find good teachers of virtue. Did he lead him through these questions through reason and understanding to a conclusion together? If anything is teaching, we just saw it. So we've just taught someone something about virtue. That's true. And will always be true. Well, will always be true. I don't know about that. But it's at least true now. By looking at what we've seen, we haven't seen anyone with the ability to teach virtue. Even virtuous people, even people with the resources. So, here is an example. Meno wanted to know whether virtue can be taught. Have a look at this, Meno. Here's me teaching virtue to someone. Let's see how good he becomes. Let's see. Did Anytos become more good? Whoops, I'm in the wrong page. Here we go. I'm afraid, O companion Anytos, that excellence or virtue is not teachable. Anytos. Let's see if he becomes more virtuous. O Socrates, you appear to me to easily speak badly about human beings. Therefore, on the one hand, I will give you some advice. We talked about this. What's advice? Different from teaching, right? Advice, you don't go through the stages of seeing how the pieces fit together, reasoning for yourself, being able to ask questions. So while Socrates has done one thing that we can recognize as following the structure of the dialectic, this fellow is doing another. We call advice. Let me tell you my beliefs. Never trust women. Never trust the Italians. Let me give you some advice. Different, right? It's like an opening red flag. Kind of like when somebody says, I'm not racist, but... Well, hang on, stop. You don't have to finish your sentence. I know you're going to say something racist. Let me give you some advice. You don't have to finish, stop. I know you're going to do some racist shit, or the equivalent. Project your personal ignorance, your false opinions from childhood you've never reflected on and you don't have any understanding on, because if you actually understood it, you'd be able to reason it through and teach people. Can't do that, so you're going to be a prejudiced jerk, imitating your parents who did it to you, and you're going to pretend it's for my benefit when it's really for your pathologos' benefit. It's not even your benefit. You think you are feeling so superior. Nope. You're kowtowing to your ignorance, the very thing you want to free yourself from, by buying into its bullshit. Harms everyone. So that's the word advice. Isn't that interesting? I'm not racist, but I'm not able to reason, understand, or teach. But let me give you some advice. Super, super important. Especially if you play music and you recognize that there is a certain sort of person who doesn't want to listen and have fun and enjoy music, but wants to be the advice giver. Notice all of the grifters and con artists in our world. Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, those sorts of people. They're people who tried to get, first of all, attention, not by doing something good and beautiful and rational and true and eternally true, like what we are doing here, but by doing something the opposite to trigger a reaction against their injustice. So Andrew Tate realized if he was very, very misogynist before he was a celebrity on Big Brother in England, he would get more screen time because he was a boring, stupid individual. No one cared until he made some sexist jokes, and then he realized if I keep being sexist, I'll get more attention. Jordan Peterson, same thing. If I keep being prejudiced against minorities and claiming to be the victim as I bully others, I will get attention because of how terrible I'm being. And then I can somehow parlay that attention, the clicks, the farming. There's a whole industry, by the way. All of those right-wing or grifter or capitalist podcasts and stuff, they all do the same thing. They manipulate people to get clicks. And then, once they got attention, they have no skill. They have no knowledge. They haven't learned the knowledge of what's good. They haven't learned the knowledge of how to fix a car engine or build a coffee table. So how are they going to imitate the knower? This, advice. Advice. They parlay the attention they got from their injustice to be a professional advice giver, or cosplay as their parents who were cosplaying to them when they were dependent as children. So that's the advice economy. And that sort of person is characterized by Anytos. At least Meno, with all his confidence in his own ignorance and false beliefs, was giving speeches, thought he was a scholar, thought he was a teacher, and said to Socrates, hey, as two fellow teachers of virtue, like you and me, Socrates, and Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, all these people who know what virtue is, and we're all teachers, right? Can we teach people to be good men? So that's Meno. Anytos is just the other side. I'm just going to give you advice. I'm going to shut down. I'm not even going to talk. I'm not even going to pretend to teach you anything. Just advice. Let me give you some advice, says Meno. Says Anytos, sorry. If you are to be persuaded by me, be careful. It may be easy to do harm or benefit people in other cities. In this city, it's very easy to harm people. You be careful, son. So his advice is, you shut up with your thinking. You don't learn dialectic. You don't question me. Notice, he's already pissed off at teachers, that the profession of teachers themselves. Just like the most vulnerable and exploited populations in the world, the most impoverished, who don't have access to any sort of education, has a similar attitude. They hate the elites with their education and their ability to read. That's Anytos. And what do? But they get defensive and aggressive and threaten to harm people who can think. What do fascists do when they get into power? Go after the thinkers. What does the pathologos do? Blocks you. It causes your problems. What does that mean? It blocks you from thinking and learning and being able to help others or teach others. The pathologos, the false image of yourself you don't know that you have, that controls you. You've got a ratatouille controlling you. You're not in control, which is why we have the same feelings, thoughts, and states of being without calling on them. Hey, I want to be happy and charming all the time. How come in XYZ scenarios I get triggered, or I self-sabotage, or I doubt myself? How do I stop that self-doubt? Philosophical midwifery, because all of those things are the effects of the pathologos. Socrates is helping us learn how to follow the logos. The logos takes you to the truth about self and reality. The pathologos maintains the ignorance and what's false while attacking what's true. And here is Anytos saying, hey, it's easy to harm people here. I think even you know that. Super important, because if there's only one Socrates in Athens, or there's only a few people like Socrates, there's more, like Parmenides, and there might have been a lot of people like Socrates and Parmenides, a lot more than today. But there were a few compared to the majority, meaning not just in our world, but within ourself and our soul, as we learn to become Socratic ourselves, as Socrates acts as a mean within the analogy between Parmenides and us. Socrates makes us Parmenidean, passes on the teaching to us, making everyone within that lineage like each other, which happens to be something or an aspect of virtue. We are all made more good and virtuous through likeness, through Socrates being the mean term or middle term between the Dharma teacher, the teaching teacher, Parmenides, and us. Or we have a Meno moment. Or we have an Anytos anger outburst, which is a rejection or counterattack against our own goodness and learning. Why? Because it's clues to a puzzle that we're here to solve. Two puzzles. We're here to solve that puzzle, what blocks us, and the other puzzle. What's the finish line when we're unblocked? Exit Anytos. Socrates. Oh, Meno, it appears to me that Anytos is angry. Yeah, he's Angry Anytos. That's what we call him now. But it does not at all surprise me. For, first of all, he thinks that I'm accusing these men. I'm accusing these men, number one. So we talk about you can't even begin the game of learning if you are playing the blame game. It's not about condoning or condemning or blaming or chastising or vilifying human beings who are different. People for making a mistake. It's recognizing that there are no mistakes. If we live in a rational or intelligible reality that's also caring, which it is entirely possible to verify for yourself, we live in a intelligent and caring universe. That verification you can get through philosophical midwifery. That's why it's called the spiritual test, spiritual method, or the paradigm for understanding problems. If that's the case, then everything that happens isn't a mistake that you can use to accuse someone, which is just a pathologos game, to lie about them being the cause, to lie about the cause being that their self is bad. You're evil, you made this mistake because you're a heathen, or you're a woman, or you're a black, or something like that. Bull fucking shit. That's the first step. Number one, you are the single cause, which is stupid. Number two, it's because you're bad. And number three, and therefore you deserve punishment. Anytos threatened to kill Socrates. So that's the steps of intimidation, or how the pathologos counter-attacks the logos and prevents our own benefit and development. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
Yes, I think so. So he thinks I'm doing that to them, and I'm not. Second, he believes he's one of them. He thinks he's just as much of a guru as Peterson. Who are the self-help gurus who are popular right now? Joe Rogan, does he count? Pat David Peterson, or whatever that guy's name. The Persian carpet salesman who pretends to be a guru for sometimes. There are a few out there. Let's be frank. Everyone wants to be that. Why? Because this cosplaying as the guru, which is not really true mastership, but the imitation, is what everyone wants if you're stuck in your pathologos, which is why midwifery is so important. How dare you tell us that you can't beat a child for not acting right simply because I don't even know what it is to be right, and I'm probably wrong, and I'm doing the opposite. The kid's probably more aligned with self than I am, because I've never done midwifery. How dare you say that that's wrong? I'm one of them. I want to be a professional advice giver, right? Like the capitalists who bootlick, so the poor people who bootlick for capitalists and billionaires. How dare you accuse billionaires? Do you not know? They deserve all to become richer and richer and richer because of the risk. They have all the money, so there's more risk. They could lose all the money. Us 99% of poor people, we have no money, so we have no risk. So we live a happier life without all this risk. They should be rewarded for that stress of the risk. That's the only thing I've ever heard that justifies wealth inequality. We have everything, so it's scary we might lose it. So we need more. Whereas you're free and happy. I would love to be in your position and have no money because there's no risk. Why do they lie in that way? Because they want to be one of them. So their famous quote is, we don't stand up against the existence of billionaires and wealth inequality, which is the cause of like 99% of crime and problems within society. Obviously, the pathologos is behind that even more primarily, but the reason we don't do that is because we don't consider ourselves part of the exploited class. We consider ourselves temporarily embarrassed billionaires. One day I'll be an Elon Musk. So how dare you tell Elon Musk he can't murder children in America by taking away their school lunches and their healthcare, and then send the money to Israel to murder children in Palestine. He has every right to. Let Elon Musk do those things he's literally doing right now. Because one day I want the freedom to encroach on the freedom of others. That's their way of thinking. Without recognizing the obvious contradiction that freedom to take away other people's freedom ain't freedom, it's the definition of oppression. So Socrates recognizes he's in this way of being, and he says, if he ever recognizes, recognizes. To recognize something, you have to see it. Perhaps remember it if it's something that's eternally true, that you're remembering, that you're, learning about. Not belief. Not advice. You can't recognize anything if it's advice, because advice is just, hey, believe me. If he ever transitions from advice giving and opinions and beliefs to recognition for himself, and he recognizes that which speaking badly really is, so the bad use of words here in the Greek, leguin, kakos, bad, legin from logos, speech. So what we want to do is recognize that. He will stop being angry. Whereas now he does not recognize that. So again, Socrates is talking to us. He is telling us, can we recognize the two different ways of speaking? Speaking badly. Earlier we called that to be like the kakadaimon, to be speaking without any nous or intellect, coordinating, and without phronesis, or the state of being of the self, or seeking the state of being of the self. So you're either phronesis with nous through logos and dialectic to benefit, or you're speaking badly, which is the same thing. Yesterday we had except the inversion of each term. It's not the phronesis recognition of self that you are keeping at all times. It's the pathologos unsuspected idea of self. It's not coordinated with nous or being. It's the rejection of anything knowable. And it's the imitation of being, imitation of beauty, imitation of care, imitation of knowingness. They're cosplaying the guru. That's the thumbs up. That's the pathologos. Our false image and model of our loved ones, which is the imitation or the reflection or the distorted version of nous. And it's not speaking through the logos, which is the dialectic. It's the specific rejection of conclusions. It's the getting triggered by the dialectic. It's the giving advice and speeches instead of the dialectic. It's debate instead of dialectic. In order to do harm. So phronesis, nous, logos, and dialectic to benefit, compared to aphronesis or pathologos idea of self, the image of truth from parents cosplaying, through the rejection of logos, the anti-logos, or the pathologos in order to harm. And he's one of the dudes who killed Socrates. That's our human condition, by the way. Nothing other than moving from the bad one to the good one. That's it. Pathologos to logos. Barbarianism, or the lower level of evolution of a species where before we had words, the blind obedience to leader, before we could think for ourselves, had a survival benefit when there were saber-toothed tigers around. But that's barbaric and primitive. We are evolving into the next stage of being where we become intelligent. Homo sapiens, man, the thinker. The real human race. We're entering into the human race. Whether or not everyone else comes along with us, or they're going to be more like Meno or Anytos, we have yet to see. And we all know the state of the world when we let Anytos and Meno ignorance run things and not Socratic truth, understanding, phronesis, nous, benefit, art. Ruling and running both our species and planet and our soul. And Soc is saying to us, hey, by the way, if you get to that stage where you can recognize the difference between both, speaking in a good way and speaking badly, you'll stop being angry. This is big. Human beings have an anger problem. In midwifery, we identify the anger as a projection from the anger that we carry in our soul due to an insult against ourself in our pathologos origin scene. In other words, we are carrying a false conclusion, taking the blame for an injustice we suffered early on. That's our anger. Unless we do midwifery, the single most important activity a human being can do while we're here, then if we don't do that, we will project our anger onto others and hurt them the same way we were hurt, instead of realizing what we're really angry about is that very activity of hurting people in that way. We're angry about the injustice we suffered. We don't want to question our teachers because we love mummy and daddy. So therefore, we don't blame the true cause of our anger, the injustice we suffered, the insult against ourself and self-logos. Instead, we blame everyone else. And then attack them. Ironically, or tragically, or comedically, if we can get out of it, perpetuating the very thing we're angry about, doing unto others the injustice we suffered. That's the human condition that we are recognizing for ourselves by reading midwifery. And Socrates is reiterating it here by saying, hey, if you are able to not believe someone else or imitate someone else, but recognize for yourself how to use the logos and dialectic, and to recognize what speaking badly, pathologos, kakadaimon, is, you won't be angry anymore. So what that would mean is, Socrates seems to be identifying the anger as, well, I guess it's the same cause, but he's saying, you're angry at your inability to think and talk and understand and see. That's what you're really angry about. You are speaking badly. You are logosing badly. If you can see the difference, you got nothing to be angry about, because we're angry at what blocks us from the logos. If you're not blocked, if you can see the logos, speaking well, and if you can see the opposite, speaking badly, then you must have removed whatever blocks you from seeing that. Meaning, no anger anymore. So you won't be the sort of jerk that kills Socrates. So that's Socrates' conclusion from Anytos' reaction, which was his reaction to the conclusion of the dialogue. The dialectic was, therefore, you can't teach it. Anytos is pissed. Yes, you can. Because I'm a teacher of virtue. I know what it means to be a good man. I learned in the school of hard knocks. Yeah. If you find everyday people or ignorant people, they think that. They think they know what is real and good and true, and they know how to teach. They know how to homeschool. They know what God is. They know what religion is right. So if someone comes along and shows them that they don't, there are two things. Two have a choice. Aporia, being stung, being curious, and further pursuing the questions, as Socrates did with Diotima and Parmenides, or get pissed about what you just saw and be a baby and pretend. No, that's not true. I do know everything. My dad does know everything. My religion does know everything. My leader, blah, blah, blah. That's barbarism. The immature, irrational, lying about what you have seen that harms you, reason, harms benefit, in order to stay loyal to something that's bad and false. Because it had a evolutionary benefit millions of years ago. That's barbarism. You're a caveman. And this is where we are as humans. We have to realize this and learn it and formalize it and do it every day. Have a midwifery shop at every corner and make the prices free. You can call it waking up, or you can call it the movement from barbarism to humanity, or pathologos to logos. There's only one movement, and it's mythologized in all other forms of media and storytelling. That follows that theme. You can have a terrible story, of course, but the ones that really resonate, that really hit, that follow the archetype, the movement from the collective to the individual, the movement from the moisture farmer to become a Jedi, the movement from living under the step parents in wherever Harry Potter used to live to the Hogwarts, is the movement of pathologos to logos. And I hate my chair. I hate it so much. I need to shell out on a decent chair. I've been pricing them. A bit skint at the moment. But I'm going to pause and see if I can fix my chair. So, conclusion, can't teach virtue. Anytos' reaction, to be triggered, threaten. Think that he is a knower. He thinks he's a knower. He thinks he's wise and he can teach, despite being completely ignorant and hating any other teacher without having any experience, by the way. Reflecting Meno's thing, which is he has no experience of being, but he thinks he knows what virtue is. Well, the virtues exist in being. How do you think you know that which you have no experience of? So you might say, so what we might recognize this as, hey, we are doing real philosophy. And people will say, oh, philosophy is a waste of time. We had someone like this last time. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. You can't know anything. Have you had any experience of true philosophy? No, I don't have to have experience. That's stupid. What are you claiming? And that was the issue. That was his position as well. I know what's knowable. Oh, have you had an experience of knowledge? No. Then where are you talking from? Imitation. He's Something drew him to a philosophy stream, and it wasn't to learn philosophy, it was to shit on it the way his dad shit on him. Because this is what he's here for. Whether he knows it or not, he's doing this anyway. He's doing dialectic, but unconsciously as a zombie, an NPC. All Socrates is saying, hey, this is how you become rational. Do it properly. Speak well and not speak bad. Right, so... But it's the same issue. I've had no experience of this, but I'm claiming to be an expert. And usually, almost always, those people will say, you can't get there. Their expertise is, whatever level I'm at, that's it. So it's not that I haven't experienced what it's like being out of my body, it's that nobody has. Which would require you to reject and ignore copious amounts of reason and evidence to say otherwise. That's what the pathologos does. They have mistaken their injustice and tyranny for its opposite. Which is why one of the worst human beings operating in American society, Donald Trump, is seen as the best by certain people. They have bought into the lie of the imitation because they are still in a barbaric caveman way of being, because they have not yet done their job and evolved out of it, which is through this. Which is why we have this channel, to let people know that. And to encourage them to do it. And to give me a tip for helping them. There's a tip link below. Help me buy a chair so my back doesn't hurt so much. So if he were able to do that recognition, he wouldn't be so angry. Good news for us who want to overcome our anger. Whereas now he has no recognition. He's operating from opinions and beliefs. Imitation. So tell me instead, Meno, are there not noble and good people among our citizens? So we've just reset the argument from the top with Meno. Let's see if Meno, watching this this train wreck unfold in front of him, is it going to make him more receptive to doing what Anytos couldn't? So are there good, noble people? Meno says, very much so. What then? Are they willing to offer selves as teachers to the young? And do they agree that virtue is teachable and that they are its teachers? No, by Zeus, but at times you will hear from selves that it is. So the good and noble people ain't teaching anything. But sometimes they claim it's teachable. Therefore, are we to say that these men are teachers of this reality, concerning which they do not even agree on this point about it, about self? So even the teachers are not in agreement. So what's going on? It appears to me that we must not, Socrates, say that these men are teachers of this reality. What then? Does it appear to you that the sophists are teachers of virtue, those who alone profess to be so? So the only ones who are claiming that they can teach virtue are these chaps called sophists. Meno says, And this is what I especially admire about Gorgias, O Socrates, because you will not ever hear him professing, proclaiming, promising this. Instead, he laughs at all the other sophists when he hears them proclaiming this, whereas he thinks that they must make clever speakers. So this is his teacher, Meno's teacher Gorgias. He never claims to teach virtue. Well, what is he claiming? Why is he a teacher then? What's he charging Meno for? Instead, he laughs at all the other sophists when he hears them proclaiming this. Whereas he thinks they must make clever speakers. So clever speakers. Let's copy this word clever and see what it is in the Greek. Because it would seem to me that it's some sort of backhanded insult. So let's look it up. Venus. Venus. The lexicon isn't opening. Genos. Terrible, horrible, fearful, astounding, danger, powerful, wondrous, skillful, shamefully. What? These are opposites. You can't be powerful and mighty and also timid and cowardly. What the heck? Skillful. Alright, lexicon isn't loading. So we'll take the translator here. Skillful. So we call them debate bros or con artists, grifters. So that's why I loved my teacher Gorgias, Socrates. He never claims to be a teacher of virtue, and he just thinks that these people who say that they are grifters. So then, these sophists do not appear to you to be teachers. Meno, I am not able to say, Socrates, for they have the same effect on me as they do on the many, so that at one time they appear to be teachers, but at other times they do not. Interesting. Then, you know that not only does this appear to you and the other politicians to be teachable at one time, but at another time not, but it also appears in this way to Theognis the poet. For you know that he says the very same thing. In which of his verses? In his Elegies, which he says, And besides these men, drink and eat and sit with them, and gratify those who have great power. For on the one hand, from the noble are taught. Whoever mixes with the bad loses even what mind they have. Socrates says, you know that in these verses he speaks as if excellence is teachable. So the noble is taught from the noble. Meno says yes. Whereas, in some other verses, just a few lines on, he says, if it were possible to make, then intelligence would also be implanted in man. He says that somehow those who have the power to do this would carry away many and large fees and would never have a bad child be born to a good father, for they would be persuaded by sound words. But you will never make a bad man good by teaching. That's another quote. Do you see that when he speaks about the same things again, he contradicts himself? So you can learn it from the good people, but sometimes you can't. Therefore, can you say that there is any business at all in which those who proclaim to be teachers are not generally agreed to be teachers? So how many other fields are like this? Where the people who are actually teachers, nobody agrees that they are teachers or that they have any knowledge. Of their subject, and to be worthless concerning the very business of which they claim to be teachers. But those who proclaim to be good and noble selves all concur that it is teachable at times, but at other times not. Therefore, of those who are so confused about any subject at all, would you say that they are genuine teachers? So, the people who are teaching are confused, they contradict themselves. They don't even agree amongst themselves that you can teach it. No one has any knowledge of anything. And a lot of people claim that they make people worthless. Do you know any other fields like that? How many air pilots don't think there is such a thing as being able to teach other pilots? There is no knowledge of how to fly a plane. That if you go to school to become a pilot, you become a worse pilot. That sometimes, like on a Tuesday, you can learn to be a pilot, but on a Wednesday, you have to be born a pilot. That's insane. None of this applies to anything else. Just politics and religion. Just the nature of the soul and the society. Or the two areas where they claim to know the good and virtue, as it applies to you within the realm of guruship or spirituality or religion, technically, or the good for the collective. For some reason, they don't agree that there is such a thing as the good, or that maybe there is, or maybe it can be taught, or maybe it can't be, maybe sometimes. And a lot of these people who claim to know the good, the Petersons of the world, actually harm people and make people worse. The Trumps, the Putins. That's collective, individually, I don't know, take your pick. The Guru. There's a fun YouTube show I call the Guru Show. A couple of dudes that reflect on the words of people who are making money claiming to be gurus of this and that. It's pretty funny. Not so much funny, but interesting. And it's kind of nice to see reason and reflection being applied to these kinds of people. Grifters. Whether they're aware of it or not. That's how they're functioning. Because, hey, we don't accept this in any other tradition. Or any other field or any other subject. Just people who claim to know what is a good and noble self. I was on jury duty recently, and it was fascinating to see everyone in that room, all the other jurors. They all think they know what's good and what's right, to the point that they can send someone to prison based on their own ignorance or own opinions about those things. And no one was in agreement with anyone else. So either one person was right and they're going to get outvoted by everyone else, or no one was right. And yet they all thought they were. Isn't that interesting? And yet if I said, hey, there's a helicopter outside, how many of you can fly the helicopter? Not one of them would apply the same logic. Well, I've never learnt it, and I don't think it can be learned, but I'm an expert. So I'll fly your helicopter. Get in. Why are we so fucking stupid? When it comes to ourselves. Of course, that's chapter 1 of midwifery. Why do we not apply that same basic logic and reasoning to self? To what's good? To how do we act? Why are we still fighting Nazis? Why do we still have systems that perpetuate wealth inequality when we know that it's stupid and harmful? Why do we have capitalism when we know that exploiting or profiteering at the expense of everything is sick and indefensible? Well, that was the opening question that led to the development of philosophical midwifery. But here, Socrates is pointing out the same thing 2,000 years ago. Therefore, of those who are so confused about any subject at all, would you say that they are genuine teachers? No, by Zeus, not I. So, is it not so then, that if neither the sophists nor those who are good and noble people, selves, neither them are teachers of this reality, then it is indeed clear that no one else could. So all the people claiming to be teachers of virtue and goodness are all wrong. Now we could say, well, hang on. If that's your reasoning, it would follow. But what if there is one person who was right? What if there was one Socrates out there? But if indeed there are no teachers, then there are no learners. It appears to me that it has to be in this way. But have we indeed agreed that if there is a reality for which there are neither teachers nor learners, then this is not teachable? That was the opening. If there is a reality that's teachable, the reality of what the excellence or virtue or highest potential or natural state of being of a person is, if that's real and teachable, but there are neither teachers nor learners, then actually it's probably not teachable after all. Right, so yeah, if it's real, but there are neither teachers or learners, then it's probably not teachable. Well, then it's not teachable, is the conclusion. Has it not then come to light that there are no teachers of virtue anywhere? And this is the thing, our translator highlighted the word light here. So one of the things you can do if you're feeling like having a bit of fun is looking for the times when the conclusions are referred to with the analogy of coming into light. We talk about enlightenment or the brilliant light of pure being, where the virtues live. So coming into light. So if we are to follow the dialectic that Socrates is defining, demonstrating, then we ourselves might come into the light of being. Because the dialectic isn't just for understanding and thinking and communication, it's also the spiritual method. It's meditation. It's what meditation copies or imitates in a poor way because it lacks logos. That's it. Meaning, not only are you learning to understand yourself, learning how to relate in a good, friendly, truly loving way to others, learning what an art is, learning how to benefit, learning how to think and understand for yourself, you're also preparing yourself, preparing your mind by understanding the nature of that light of pure being. You're preparing yourself to enter into it or come to light. Now, if that's the case, does that help us in our puzzlement over these expressions? Has it not come to light that? Because that is a kind of expression that's used throughout the text. See for yourself. See all the times he says about something coming to light and see what happens. I don't know the answer to that, but I can recognize a puzzle here. Has it not come to light that there are no teachers of virtue anywhere? It has. And if there are no teachers, then there are no learners. It has come to light in this way. Accordingly then, virtue or excellence is not teachable. Meno. It's not likely, if indeed it has been considered rightly by us. So that I am also thus wondering, O Socrates, whether good people do not exist at all. Or what is the way of generation by those who come to be? Okay, so this is all right? Same conclusion that Anytos came to before, but Anytos got pissed and threatened to kill Socrates and eventually did. Meno is like, yeah, you're right. Before he was loyal to the teaching from Gorgias, but Gorgias came up as one of those people who is cagey about whether or not it can be taught. Hey, the reason why the grifters and the right-wingers and the con artists and scammers, propagandists like Peterson and the Daily Wire and those sorts of people, Ben Shapiro, they don't want to talk to people like Sam Cedar, who can think better, is because they know that they're lying and they know they'll get caught out. So they're cagey. So we talked about the recent YouTube slop video of Jordan Peterson debating 20 atheists from high school or college or something. And it was just a train wreck. But it did illuminate their way of being. It's like Gorgias. Jordan Peterson would never, ever make any statement about anything. It's all up in the air. He's letting you do the work to project your own bullshit onto him and say, well, he sounds like my dad. I agree with him. That's the grift. Politicians say family values, while actively enslaving and exploiting you and taking away your rights and fucking over the planet and perpetuating the evil of capitalism and wealth inequality. But they'll use the word family values, wanting you to project your family values. Hey, what kind of family values murdering children? That's not much of a family value. Ask them, hey, what do you make of the genocide in Palestine? They'll run. They don't want to say anything because that is the basic first step of reflection, and they'll be caught out as being wrong. They're liars, they're shim-sham men, they're flip-floppers, they... Con artists. So Gorgias has been exposed as, well, maybe I teach virtue, maybe it's not teachable, who knows? Like Peterson, are you a Christian? I could be, maybe I'm not, maybe I am. Who knows? By the way, white nationalist Christianity and fascism and capitalist exploitation is good, by the way. Wait, is that your position? Oh, I don't know. When you ask me, oh, it could be anything. So Gorgias has been exposed in this kind of a way. You never go to a mechanic and say, can you fix my car? Oh, I don't know. Maybe cars can't be fixed. Oh, maybe there's not even a profession we call mechanic. Maybe it's whatever you want it to be. Have you thought of that? No, you suck. It's your fault. Feel bad. See my degrees on the wall? My PhD piled higher and deeper? Crap. PhD. Ooh. But having been exposed in that kind of way to his student, who has gone through reasoning in a way he has never done with his own teacher, funnily enough, Meno's okay to say, well, yeah, maybe it can't be taught then. Maybe there are no good people. It seems to be the first time in the text Meno has accepted a conclusion. Before, he was threatening to kill Socrates and abusing his appearance. So can we conclude that Meno has been made better by having seen somebody else go through the dialectic on the hot seat and react in a similar way to him? Could the combination of Anytos' response to the dialectic plus the slave boy's reaction to the dialectic, the slave boy was happy. He was happy to learn something new and be made better and be made a better teacher himself. Compared to Anytos, he was the opposite. I know all the answers. I haven't had experience. I don't have to. It's common sense. And fuck you if you're going to tell me otherwise, and I'll kill you. Pry it from my cold dead hands. Now, I tend to use American stereotypes to personify that way of being because it's obvious. I'm sure in whatever tradition you're watching this, you'll have your own version of rednecks, anti-intellectuals, blind loyalty to leaders, parents, preachers, whatever religion you happen to grow up in. There are the same jerks exploiting that too. So what? So, if those are the two possible reactions that Meno has seen other people go through in response to this, could that have helped Meno do this, which is something new has come to light? So now, something new has come to light, different than what he formerly thought. What's his reaction? He has given birth to a new question. Anytos ain't giving birth to anything. He's running away. Get his guns, come back, shoot the thinkers. Shoot the good people. Which is barbarism. He's a barbaric cavemen still. Humans are barbaric cavemen still. And except for those who are doing this. And Meno has been brought closer to the light because here he is saying, by Zeus, I would never I would never say that that these people should be in business. And there is any business who claim to be teachers of something that they claim to have no knowledge of. People can be made worthless, etc., etc. So now his thing is, well, hang on a second. Now I'm not going to run away or threaten you. I've given birth to a new question. Come to light. Come to light. So what is he doing? Wondering. Now, this wondering, we want to see if it's come up before in the text. Because if he is in a state of wondering and it's tied to our conversation about aporia or being stung, then maybe Meno has been made better. Because we were talking about being stung or open, curious, wondering as some high state of being, simply because Socrates is in it at all times. And Socrates understands, recognizes, and is able to use that knowledge, experience, understanding to dialogue and to help somebody else through the reasoning to also see phronesis of self, nous of intellect, logos and dialectic of communication functioning in order to benefit. These are conclusions we have come to recognize simply by following Socrates, indicating Socrates has some experience of this, has understanding of this, and has integrated it into a level of mastery where he can use it to talk to Meno, to talk to Anytos, to talk to the slave boy, and to talk to you, Fred, and you, Jessica, watching this video. 2,000 years or more, and more than 2,000 years through time. And this person with that level of mastery of what seems to be virtue, or the closest we've gotten, or at least the key aspects of virtue, this person was saying, hey, you know what my state of being is? Wondering or stung, aporia, at a loss. Notice Socrates goes into all his dialogue saying, well, I don't know, but let's talk about it. I don't know, but I'm curious. Whereas most people you get into conversations about, I do know, let me tell you. I do know, give me advice. Let me give you advice. I do know, don't you tell me anything. I do know, if you challenge me, I'll beat you up. That's most people. That's barbarism. Blind loyalty to ignorance and a false sense of certainty. Dunning-Kruger left a message on your voicemail, by the way. Socrates is saying, hey, you know what the state of being is of somebody who has those qualities that we talked about before? Opposite, wondering. So, huge twist or huge clue within the big puzzle of the text is tied to aporia or being stung or wondering. So, here we have the word wondering. We want to know if it's tied to that section. Because that's a huge thing about what virtue is. How does that whole section about being stung, how does it relate to virtue? Oh, someone's cooking in my apartment complex. I can smell it. It's delicious. So we copy. No. And then we search. So surprise, it's the root of surprise. Wonder. Amazing. Surprising. I was amazed and responded. Admire, it's in admire. Interesting. So the word wonder is scattered throughout, but it's not specifically linked to the state of open, curious aporia. Interesting. So I'm left wondering, O Socrates, whether good people do not exist at all, or if there are good people, or what is the way of generation or becoming of those which are good come to be? Because, remember, all human beings get a pathologos. We all get the zombie virus that makes us NPCs chained to fate. So chained and prison are the metaphors that Socrates uses all throughout his dialogues. You're chained to the walls of images, to the wall of shadows on the cave in the Republic. You are chained to your problems of your pathologos in the Phaedo. Now, he doesn't use the word pathologos, but we recognize it. You are imprisoned in the cycles of reincarnation until you do your job and master this. Enter the human race from barbarism. So we all have to make that journey. And we have the two levels of amnesia, the forgetting of reality when we're born, the forgetting of where we were before we were here. Much like every time you go to sleep, you forget where you were before you went to sleep. You forget that you're a person in a human life. The dream world is all you remember. And then when you wake up, you forget that life, and so on and so on. So there's that kind of amnesia. And then, of course, there's the amnesia we have to overcome in midwifery. The forgetting of our problems, the forgetting of the repeating cycle of our problems, and the forgetting of the origin scene and the conclusion we came to. You have to remember that stuff so we can realize it, see it for what it is, let it go, and overcome the other level of remembering. Overcome the other forgetfulness. Now, that is interesting because it's a process. It's a coming to be. In the physical world, we're not in the state of being. That's ousia. That's the thing we need to experience. That it's absurd that Meno is talking about virtue if he's never experienced it. It's absurd that Gorgias has a school if he's not introducing people into the initiation experience of reality. It's absurd that any education doesn't teach the dialectic to reach that. It's absurd because here we are in a process of coming to be. That's the term that defines the physical world of time and space. Becoming. So, if we have to go through a process of becoming to either become good or to recover our innate virtue or goodness of self through a kind of remembering and recognition, not through believing some other idiot on the physical world. It's not a problem with advice. You're tied to the physical world. If we are to remember the metaphysics, carrying advice isn't going to help. So, if that's the case, either there are no good people, we all stink, we're all stuck in barbarism, or how do we actually come to be good people? So, different kind of a conclusion from Meno, different state of mind, wondering, and a new thing. He is not insisting he already knows what virtue is, insisting he already knows how women should be stuck in the kitchen and how slavery is good and how hurting people who disagree with you is good, being kind to your friends and harm your enemies. Not insisting he knows all this and insisting he should lead the conversation. He's given birth to a question. On this channel, we are learning what real philosophy is so we can awaken philosophy. One of the key distinguishing aspects of real philosophy compared to everything else is appreciating and recognizing the value of questions. To carry a question is to be on a quest. There's an openness involved. There's a wonder involved. There's a use of logos, words, communication, chats over coffee with your friends. Formerly, the aspects of other kinds of meditations, which just take little bits of those and charge you some money to sit. And here is Meno, who's given birth to a couple of really good questions, which can allow us to continue to follow the logos, which can allow the conversation to progress, to continue, to evolve. If you're certain that's it, there's your ceiling. No one in my house will ask questions, says most parents. No one in this church can ask questions about blah, 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 blah. Fascists, Trump. No one can ask questions. You're fake news if you ask me questions. No one can question Putin. No one can question Hitler. No one can question your boss if you've got a petty tyrant boss in capitalism. It's the same shit everywhere. It's just one fucking game. The rejection of questions, the suppression of words and questions through false hierarchies of oppression, which is nothing other than the imitation of your parents, which is the pathologos. Or the movement from that to true humanity, true reason, true goodness and virtue, and learning something that can actually help you, actually help your friends, actually bind your relationships in true love and benefit. Not the absurdities we wade through today in our insane society, governed by pathologos principles. It's always the same game. So, is it possible? Are there good people out there? Or are we all doomed? Considering the people claiming to be experts are all the opposite. Menos and Anytoses. And they don't even point to a knowledge. Like we are pointing, by the way, we've been pointing to knowledge, haven't we? So all the people claiming to be experts are all haven't gone through midwifery and haven't mastered haven't moved from pathologos to logos. But is there a knowledge that we are using, that Socrates is using? Yeah, there is. Knowledge itself. Which is why he said to Meno, hey, your education was crazy if you didn't experience the initiation into being. That's what it's for. What do you think we're here to learn about? We can break down the aspects of being because we have space and time, allowing us to develop understanding. But what we're understanding isn't this place. It's just the playground for understanding. Because everything you see here is an imitation of the real. And in the Phaedo, he says everything here wants to be the real. We want to be beautiful. We want to have beauty when we love it. We want to be with our beloved forever. We want to be good ourselves. We want to experience bliss ourselves. We want to be just. And therefore, Socrates concludes, everything in the physical world can be seen as one thing, can be unified in this way. Everything in the physical world seeks being and is here to point us, remind us, guide us to being. For example, if you're walking down the beach and you see two sticks, these are capos. Very hard to find capos out in the wild or on the beach. But if you did, let's pretend these are sticks. You look at two sticks that are the same size. You go, oh, they're the same. Or they're equal. Now, think about that for a second. They're not the same stick. But you saw sameness there. Where did you see it? Where did you first learn this idea of sameness? Because those sticks aren't literally the same. But they are physical things that meet the principle of sameness enough to remind your consciousness of the idea of sameness, which isn't a physical thing. Or remind you of equality. But if you look really closely, they're not exactly the same, even in length. You can't have something the same in the physical world. But you need to use the principle of sameness to survive the physical world. You see a green light. It's a new green light. It's not the same as the last green light. But you use your mind to access the principle of sameness and say the same thing applies to this. It has an equal value as the last green light, so I can drive my car through the stop sign, through the intersection. So realizing this, Socrates says in the Phaedo, allows you to unify all physical existence in that same way. Everything seeks to be actually equal, but will fall short so long as it stays physical. You cannot be pure equality in the physical world. You cannot be pure justice and beauty in the physical world, because that's a thing that exists eternally in being, necessarily as a principle. So what? So if that's where we find ourselves, in a world of becoming, suffering from two kinds of amnesia, with a single human quest to move from pathologos to pathologos, and everything in the physical world is to remind us of that and direct us to that, then how do we do it? How do we make that journey, overcome that forgetfulness, listen to the sticks pointing to being, and fulfill our highest purpose, destiny, excellence, and virtue? Considering all of these other people around here are stuck in their pathologos ignorance. How do we reach our full potential and become good people? Good question, Meno. We will join you in that question, because remember, to carry a question is to be on a quest. That's the point. That's the true hero's journey.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So good questions, Meno. Has Meno been made better? By the way, was there any teaching involved? Why, when Socrates was talking to him directly, did Meno react negatively, but when he saw other people going through it, he has been made better with these questions? Aren't these questions better? So could it be taught? Then how did Meno become better? Those are the questions for next time, along with Meno's questions. Hey, how do we become good people? And yeah, lots of fun today. Thank you for joining me. Featured player today was Baby Phoenix Stuffy and Giant Phoenix Stuffy. Round of applause. Featured players. I said. There we go. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.